So, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Uh, you're all over the world joining, so thank you for jumping on this call, on this Zoom. Um, I'm going to start just with a couple of words on the shocking events that happened last week. On Sunday, right? Sunday in Australia, in Bondi Beach. Sending a lot of hugs and condolences to everyone who is from Australia and for all of us in general. Um, we are also still waiting for Ron Gavili, the hostage that is still in Gaza, has not been returned, so we don't forget that. And on top of all of that, nothing is holding back Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, Smotrich government from continuing the judicial coup and continuing talking about changing the essence of what the Jewish and democratic state that we all love and cherish is all about. Um, Personally, just an announcement. I'm heading to Israel next week with the family. After almost 2 years, I haven't been there. So if you are around, happening to be on the break there, obviously Israelis, I hope to see you. I will be in Haifa on Saturday, and in Jerusalem on the following Saturday. So 27 and the 3rd. Um, so let's dive to our topic today. I'm adding Tomer to the spotlight. Hold on. Tomer, you are here, right? Spotlight. Here is Tomer. Tomer, can you say something so I know you can hear you?
Yeah, of course. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm really happy to be here.
Um, so, uh, um, Tomer, I'll just make a short intro for those of you who doesn't follow Tomer and is not on social media, on Twitter and Facebook. First of all, Tomer is a great friend and one of the people who first joined to the rallies back in San Francisco in 2020. Uh, Tomer Persico it's Dr. Tomer Persico, but that's the last time I will say Dr. Tomer. Is a research fellow at the Shalom Hartman Institute and a senior research scholar at the UC Berkeley Center of the Middle Eastern Studies. He is a frequent contributor to Haaretz and leading public intellectual on issues of contemporary Jewish identity, spirituality, and intersection of religion and the state of Israel. I hope I didn't miss something big, Tomer. No, I did
It's
not.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
And Tomer is on a tour in the US for the last 2 weeks, launching his book in God's image: How Western Civilization Was Shaped by a Revolutionary Idea, which is B'Tzelem Elohim, right?
Yeah,
In God's image.
that's right.
Um, so Tomer,
And
thanks for
actually, it's good that you said that I'm on a tour. I'll just say I'm in a hotel and I'm using the hotel Wi-Fi. If it breaks down, I'll switch to my phone's Wi-Fi. So hang in there, and I hope everything will go without any problems.
I'm sure it will be fine. Uh, um, So, Tomer, I want to first, again, thank you for joining us. I know that you're busy. I know that you are in a tour. I know, but we took advantage of you being in our time zone, so you don't have to do it late night.
Right.
Uh, and generally, I want to start just by you describing what got you to write this book.
Right.
And For those who are not religious, tell us a little bit more about the reasons why we
Yeah.
liberals care about democracy, might be the audience for this book.
Okay. So right. So this is the book, right? And I wanted to write it because I never thought that the fact that we have rights and consider all of us equal to each other is anything self-evident. I mean, we all know by heart the first sentence of the second passage of the Declaration of Independence of the U.S., right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal, that they were endowed by their creator, etc., etc. It's not self-evident. In fact, for most of history, most people in most places didn't think that way. They thought that they were superior to other groups. They thought that there were people, humans, who were subordinate to them or should be subordinate to them. They didn't think anybody had any God-given rights or universal rights or human rights, nothing like that. So these ideas obviously came from somewhere. These ideas obviously have a history, just like nations or just like cities or just like biology has a history. And what I wanted to do is track down that history. I wanted to understand where these ideas came from. And while looking for the answer, I understood, I think pretty obviously, it doesn't take any brilliance to understand this, that these ideas are connected in a very deep way to the idea of the image of God, to the idea that appears in the first chapter of Genesis, of the creation of all humans in the image of God. Now, what I was surprised to find out is that nobody had written about it. I mean, it appears here and there. Of course, again, it's an obvious thing, and some people have mentioned it in their books about liberalism or about human rights, etc. But nobody has actually dedicated a whole monograph, a whole book to it, and that's what I did. What I really wanted to do was chart out in a way of what we call the history of ideas, the history of that idea, the idea that all people were created in the image of God, and how it germinates and develops along the history of the West. Of course, it starts with the ancient Hebrews, the ancient Israelites in the land of Canaan. It starts with the Bible. It progresses through the latter stages of the Bible. It progresses to the Chazal, to our sages. And of course, it's taken up by Christianity, and develops within Christianity. And what I do in the book is try to show how unbelievably influential was this idea. It influenced the way the church behaved. It influenced rights discourse when it finally gets developed. It influenced the scientific revolution. It influenced the development of feminism. It influenced, obviously, the universal understanding of all people as equal. So I said it influenced many things. It influenced even the scientific revolution. It influenced feminism, and it even influenced, and this is a very ironic point, perhaps, that I show in the book, it even influenced secularism. The same idea that us as individuals have sacred internal lives, have sacred dimensions, have an autonomy which must be protected. This same idea leads to the understanding for some that we also can't tolerate a God that commands us, that tells us what to do. And it leads also to the rejection for some of the divine, and so leads in an ethical way for moral reasons, for people wanting to retain their dignity. It leads also to secularism. So that's what, in general terms, what I show in the book. I will say one more thing.
Sure.
I wrote this book for intellectual reasons, but I also wrote this book for, let's say, ethical reasons. I wrote this book also to tell me, my fellow Jews in Israel and Jews in general, that the liberal order is not something that is foreign to our tradition, that it indeed hinges on the roots, or its roots are hinging on our tradition, on the first chapter of Genesis. And what I want to say as an Israeli, mostly to my Israeli friends, is that if you are rejecting liberalism, humanism, feminism, rights discourse, reason, if you are rejecting these as something foreign to Judaism and clinging on to some authentic Jewish version that you think has to include racism or misogyny or whatever, you're making a big mistake. You're actually tearing away a central part of the Jewish tradition. Again, it's as central as chapter 1 of Genesis.
So that's super interesting, and we will dive into it because again, I mean, like it's not. I mean, Israel, as its definition in the Declaration of Independence, is thinking about itself as Jewish and democratic, and it's one of the quick questions we keep asking ourselves now that we identified as a camp of we want to have democracy. We are fighting for democracy for the last at least 3 years.
Yeah.
We are still trying to define what Jewish means. So there is many definition to what Jewish means, and somehow the Jewish definition that is took over Israel in the last 78 years is Orthodox, and now it's even getting even more to a messianic one.
Yeah.
And one of the key elements that when I read about Mechinat Eli and Beit David, and we heard about it from Yair Nehorai, is always trying to find a way to dehumanize someone else, right? Like you dehumanize the reforms. I mean, the dehumanize the women, dehumanize obviously Palestinian and Arabs and Muslims.
Yeah.
Where does it? I mean, like what got wrong in a way in the middle between defining B'Tzelem Elohim and becoming something so deeply and we will again, and it's not just happening in Judaism. I mean, like it's happening like we hear people like
Yeah.
Nick Fuente and others. Why people are
But
using that? What are the tools?
I'm going to yeah. So first of all, it's happening in all these places. It's also happening in the left. Because if you think like I will give an example. At the beginning of this month, the Cornell Student Union, Cornell University for higher degrees, issued a statement that Israel, of course, is committing genocide and the Palestinians have a right to resist the occupation in any means necessary, right? Now, of course, since the 7th of October, there is a very concrete understanding of what any means necessary means, right? We know what it means. And so if you issue such a statement, you are dehumanizing Israelis. That's what you're doing. You're delegitimizing Israeli life as it is, right? Right. So it comes from all
All over
corners,
the place.
this dehumanization. But I will say, it's not something that's gone wrong. I will say, completely opposite. This is, unfortunately, the default human condition. The default human condition is thinking we are superior to you, thinking our group is better, I am the best, I get to do to you whatever I want, I can steal from you, kill you, etc. And you don't have any rights. This is how humans behaved most of history, I'm sorry to say. Okay. And again, what is peculiar, what is unique, is the idea that indeed all people are equal, that indeed human life has meaning and significance, that indeed it is sacred and has sacred dimensions, which we call rights, which have to be protected. This is the surprising idea.
Got it.
This is what happens when you have a culture that is worthy to speak about, right? That I mean, and for that idea to be realized in society, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes education, and it takes moral determination, and it doesn't always happen. And we are unfortunately in an era in which this is breaking down.
And it's I think we had a discussion about it with Professor Ran Halperin, about the idea that the default, unless you work really, really hard.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and that's in theory how democracy is supposed to protect itself.
Exactly.
Right?
Democracy is work. Democracy is work in progress. It's always an effort. And this is also what I tell people, I don't know if we want to get into this, but I show that rights discourse began in the Catholic Church in the 13th century. Okay, there's many opinions of where human rights began. I try to show this in the book, etc. But Of course, people will then say, well, obviously, the Catholic Church in the 13th century, indeed also in the 19th century, perhaps even in the 21st century, is not liberal and doesn't really, believe in universal human rights or whatever. That's true. Again, the default condition is that you're not liberal. But sometimes there's an idea that comes up that says, for the Catholic Church, all people or humans were created in the image of God, and we have some obligation as a result of this. Now, does that mean that the church changes overnight? No, it doesn't at all, but it means that something is developing, and it can, given the right conditions, develop into the liberal order which we enjoy today in the West.
So liberal order is something that is a mandatory for democracy, right? I mean, in a way.
Yes.
But I think that we are seeing more and more democracies that are trying to be less liberal, right?
Yes, that's right.
Hungary and others. I mean, like, do you think that they're using the idea of dehumanization as a tool to become to get more power? So, or does it just it's not related to each other?
Dehumanization always can be a tool, and but usually it's used against the other, the non-citizen, against the enemies from without. And what we see today, I don't think it goes as far as dehumanization. What we see from populist leaders today is trying to define the opposition parties, the parties that are opposed to them, not as subhuman or not human, but as foreigners, but as elites that are out of touch and don't care about the nation, don't care about the people. That's really what we have here, right? And portraying themselves as the true representatives of the people. So it's not exactly dehumanization, but I agree with you that what's happening is trying to dilute or undercut the liberal elements within our democratic
So
state.
maybe it's not a dehumanization, but it's basically making sure that not everyone is equal, right? So it's like it's not about I mean the idea that there are some that are equal more,
Yeah.
and that's something to look at.
Yeah. I mean, look, the minute you try to divorce yourself or dilute the liberal elements in your society, you're going against liberal ideals like fundamental equality, like rights discourse, right? Like limited government, rule of law, separation of powers. And that's what we see with populist leaders. They don't want any limitation to their power. They don't want judicial review, right? They don't want any of those things that are part and parcel of the liberal order.
So, in that sense, I mean, like when you look on the liberal order, I mean, like one of the key things that I mean that you're talking, I think, in the book is about self being individual, right? Like the individuality, and at the same time, I mean, if everyone is individual, right? How do you actually build a country, a group?
Right.
How does it work together?
That's a fantastic question. Another way of understanding my book is as a rendition of the history of individualism. Because really, what the idea of the image of God does is not only introduce an element of equality, a fundamental, essential equality between all people. That it does, but it's not the only thing. It also introduces the element of significance and uniqueness to each and every human life. And I show how it works. There's a famous Mishnah in Sanhedrin that really spells this out. I probably you know it, כל המציל נפש אחת, או כן, מקיים נפש אחת, כאילו קיים עולם מלא. Everyone who saves one soul, it is as if they saved an entire world. Every human being is unique, irreplaceable, and significant, and we need to cherish human life. So that's also within that idea of the image of God. And what it does is it underlines and emphasizes an individualism. Every individual counts, and every individual has their autonomy to pursue their goals, to fulfill their potential or destiny or fate, however you want to call it, right? And so what we see really in the Bible is the beginning of individualism. Now, it's very hard for us as modern individuals to try to imagine what it is not to be an individual, right? I don't think we can't off the I mean, just by trying, imagine it. But these were societies really in which you didn't count as a person for yourself. You were only a part of a network, a part of a mesh. You were a link in a chain that goes always past, present, and to all directions. You weren't an autonomous being. And so that also begins with the idea of the image of God. And I show how that progresses, how individualism progresses in the Jewish tradition, then goes on to the Christian tradition. Then the Christian tradition magnifies this and emphasizes this, let's say, also in the Protestant Revolution, right? Martin Luther with his revolution. So, and it comes and really manifests itself perhaps fully in the liberal order. Now, what you asked is an important question, because if we are all individuals, how are we going to organize ourselves and to conceive of ourselves as part of peoples, as part of states, as part of traditions, as part of religions, as part of ethnic groups? All these things are challenged by the individual conception that the liberal order introduces. And again, this comes from the idea of the image of God. And I think there's a tension that really can't be completely harmonized between these two elements. Now, I don't think that's necessarily bad. It can be a fruitful tension. It can be a tension that brings creativity and brings dynamism. So it's not necessarily bad, but we do need to watch out for either people or movements who try to make us only parts of collectives, only links in a chain, right? Or the other way also, for people or movements who try to tell us you are only individuals, you don't have any connections, you're not connected to the past, to the future, you're not connected to people around you, you're just a monad, a self-existing entity. That's also not true, and it's also dangerous. So I think this trajectory of becoming more and more individualized that we see in the West has to be balanced by understanding that we are a part of actually larger groups, that we have responsibility for them, that we are a part of them, that we there's no way around living with other people and being in deep contact with them.
So I'll take this and extend it to what's happening right now in Israel, and I'm not sure if you will agree with me on that or not. But it seems like actually not just in Israel, even here. I mean, like that the government are starting to look more into the base, like creating care only about their own group, and maybe it's the right way. A word for that is like to their own shtetl, right? Instead of like being
Yeah.
mamlachti, right? Thinking
Yeah.
about the collection. I mean, is that something that and I think you refer to that also in the book in some way, right? I mean, in that way.
Yeah, I mean, but this also is a part of the crisis of liberalism which we are in, and it's
Okay,
part of what I mentioned
let's
before
extend on that. Yeah, yeah.
of populism. I mean, yeah, what is? I mean, populism is a specific type of politics. If in general politics are the arena, the field in which different groups of citizens meet together to decide and argue about the division of funds and the division of power. This is a siren from my street in Manhattan. Sorry. So this is normal politics or democratic politics. Populist politics sees politics as the arena in which the representatives of the people, the real representatives of the real people, meet agents that come from outside that try to get funds and power, assets and power from the people in an illegitimate way, and they have to reject them. So the populist leader will say, I am representing the real people. I'm representing the actual people of Hungary or people of Israel or real Americans or whatnot, right? And we need to reject the elites or the courts or the clerks, the bureaucrats, the immigrants, all of whom are not the real people, right? And we need to take care only of the real people, which are the people that voted for us. And then you get this care that is given only to the base, the electoral base, while excluding others.
And it's interesting. I mean, there was just a question came from Donald about about how do you reconcile your theory that everyone is created in equal rights with the Jewish claim that we are the God-chosen people.
Okay,
Uh,
right. Look, I will say, first of all, very straightforwardly, is there, I mean, the chosenness thing, it can be interpreted in many ways. It can be interpreted as, okay, we have a covenant with God, but that doesn't mean we're better. It can be interpreted, okay, we are actually more responsible or we have more duties. And of course, it can be interpreted in negative ways. And even more so, if you ask me, is there racism in Judaism? Is there ethnocentrism in Judaism? Of course there is. Of course there is unbelievable racism in our tradition. There is misogyny, there is patriarchy, there is a lot of bad things in the tradition, not the whole tradition, but in the tradition, right? Again, I'm saying this is the default conditions. Many groups have thought that they were the best, they are chosen, God promised them. The Maasai tribe in Africa, I'm just giving an example off the top of my head, believes that God promised them all the cows in the world. All the cows in the world are their tribe, the Maasai tribe, right? And they go about reclaiming cows from other tribes because it's theirs. God promised them, right? So I'm saying this is the basic human condition. We are good, you're less good, right? Or even bad. What the Jewish tradition introduces in the Bible is something different. So
okay.
it has all the general, usual, you know, stuff that can be more healthy, less healthy, more benign, more malign that any other group has, but it also has this idea. And this idea is, I'm trying to show in my book, is what generated, by the way, not in any deterministic way, it could have gone wrong, but it did generate over the last 2,000 years what we today call and enjoy as the liberal order, right? It did generate rights discourse and universal equality and humanism and feminism and indeed secularism, right? And I doubt if we didn't have that idea in chapter 1 of Genesis, if we would be living today in a liberal order. I think that idea is that seminal, and that's what I try to show in the book.
Is it unique to what we call the monotheistic religion? I mean, like it didn't.
It's
There
not
is.
even monotheistic. It's not monotheistic. It's Jewish, and then Christianity takes hold of it and develops it. But if you look at the Quran, you're not going to find the image of God there. If you
Okay.
look at the Genesis story in the Quran, there's no image of God. Islam takes great care to distance God as far as possible from humans for good theological reasons, right? God is totally abstract. We don't understand him. It's something else entirely. The total other, the absolute other, the capital O, right? Okay, that's a theological stance that Islam adopts. That's why also you can't draw anything, right? In mosques, there's no drawings, only calligraphy, right? But it means something. It means that there's no essential affinity and even similarity between God and humans. There's no image of God. We have a tradition in which, in Genesis itself, people argue with God all the time. Why? Why can Abraham argue with God? Why can Moses argue with God? Why can the prophets argue with God? Why can Job, who is not Jewish, argue with God? Right? Why can all these people argue with God? Because there is the image of God in them. They are, of course, they are, we are, for whoever believes, much less powerful, much less important, much less everything than God. And still we are subjects. And we do share enough of God to be able to have a dialogue with God as subject to subject, right? So, and I think that is immensely important. And one of the core characteristics that you see in the Jewish and Christian tradition over and over again is rebellion against God, right? Over and over again, you reject something that God says, sometimes in the name of God, but you do something else. And this sort of dialogue is um, a characteristic of our traditions. And again, I think it stems from the image of God, and it results in what we have today, a culture of deliberation, of polemics, of freedom of speech, of people who hold as a sacred right their ability to say whatever they think.
So going back to the crisis in Israel, I mean, which we all are worried about. I mean, what you're trying to what you kind of like describing now is like almost like the basis of idea that liberal Israelis secular. I would consider myself one of them. Before I moved from Israel to the U.S. For relocation, I wasn't even taught anything like that at school, or I mean,
Yeah.
like thinking about liberalism and connection to Judaism, if you want to connect to that. Which, in many ways, I mean, like again, maybe sometimes I call I mean, again, personally, I think about when I look about Judaism in America or Reform and conservative. I mean, it's much more democratic, right? It's much more equal. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think it's going to take to move the needle in Israel to get more of us, secular Israelis, people who went to Kaplan, to know about that,
To know about the image of God.
to know about the connection between the Judaism as a liberal,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
as a,
It's
as a
hard. It's hard. It's
sorry.
hard. I mean, first of all, I wrote my book part of the reason I wrote my book is for that.
And
But
just to clarify, it was written like a couple of years ago, and it was
in
just
Hebrew, yeah,
translated now. Yes, right.
the first version was in Hebrew. Now, uh, there's a lot of antagonism towards religion today in Israel, and you can very easily understand why. We have religious people in the government which are doing a terrible job, and this is really saying it in the nicest way, right? There are laws, there's no real separation of religion and state in Israel, and there are laws that coerce religion over people. I myself have suffered from them. I'm not married in Israel. I am married, but I'm not married through the chief rabbinate of Israel because I didn't want anything to do with it, because it's a coercive, corrupt institution. And so we all know, I mean, Judaism is in trouble in Israel, and that's why there's a lot of antagonism towards it. But I think it's so important to do what you mentioned here, to have secular Israelis embrace and reclaim Judaism for themselves, because most people in Israel, and that's simply a numerical majority, most people in Israel are totally committed to their Judaism, will not give up their Judaism. And given the alternative of choosing to be Jewish and choosing to be democratic, if that is the choice, they will choose Jewish. And so we need to talk to them in a Jewish language, and we need to assure them that being democratic not only doesn't contradict their Judaism, but in fact fulfills their Judaism. And again, that's what I tried to do in the book. But it's hard. I mean, we're fighting uphill. We're in a bad situation.
So, speaking about that, I mean, like, and what we are trying to, in a way, do from here is obviously support and help. I mean, like, do you think that diaspora Jews has any way or shape to help in that way?
I think so. I think first and foremost, I mean, we have so much to learn from diaspora Jews about Judaism that is liberal, first of all, right? A Jewish life that is a full Jewish life that is liberal and even hinged based upon liberal values. But apart from learning from them, I think over the last 3 years, American Jews and diaspora Jews did a lot to support our like the liberal forces in Israel. I mean, first and foremost, with the judicial overhaul, rooting and supporting the demonstrations, but also rejecting very clearly the people in government that represent the worst kind of Judaism, the racist, ethnocentric, Kahanist, fascist sort of Judaism, which is so important. Like when Ben Gvir or Smotrich come to the US, yes, it's important that no shul lets them in. It's important that there is nobody that wants to that legitimizes them because they are illegitimate. And we need to make this clear. And by rejecting that sort of Judaism, diaspora Jews are showing Israeli Jews that there are some things that are beyond the pale. And I think this is so important. We need to firmly establish boundaries, and we need to say such racist Judaism. And again, I'm not even calling it fake Judaism. There is racism in Judaism. But if you want to concentrate, if you want to take, if you want to cherry pick and collect all the racist parts of Judaism, you can get Kahanism, no problem. Authentic Judaism, which is Kahanism. But if you do that, we need to say you're out of the camp. Like we're not going to legitimize you. We're not going to talk to you.
Yeah, that's part of what we are trying to do, and obviously the elections are coming up, and I mean we will probably try to signal what's important for world jury. And if, just as a side note, I just uploaded a video by Rabbi Gilad Kariv that spoke about the relationship. It's on our YouTube channel.
He's great.
Uh,
He's great.
yeah. So there is a comment here, Tomer. It's worth sharing from Jeffrey that says. That Tomer has quoted the Mishnah Sanhedrin in the same way that Islam has its own, not just Quran, but in the Sufi Muslim tradition, humans hope to overcome the separation and fuse with God through His love for man.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that note. Indeed, in the Hadith, which is the oral tradition of Islam, there is the image of God. It does appear in the Hadith, and of course, Sufis are marvelous in the way that they go a long way to create a version of Islam that is much more tolerant and indeed much more religious, in my view. It's authentically, it wants to, as you said, bridge the gap between man and God. So that definitely exists.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to take us to the next step. I mean, in the sense of like the part that connects. I mean, that connects liberalism around the world. And obviously, again, we are all fighting for that part. And in many ways, I mean, like when you look about the U.S. is kind of like as you said. I mean, the Constitution was mentioning it, and other, but not always. I mean, you had like rights for women or rights, obviously, for the civil rights process. I mean, like so. In your sense, liberalism is a process that needs to be mandatory to learn about, but you're saying also that we need to fight for that. When you compare those two areas, I mean, Israel and the US, because many people will come to many of us and say like, well, Israel is not democracy, right? Apartheid, you're occupying
Mhm.
people. I mean, and at the same time, I mean, we disagree with it because we are saying that, again, within the green line, we have equal rights. And beside the national law that needs to be abolished, obviously, or changed. Um, how do you connect the idea that there are democracies who are less liberal and more liberal? Like, how do you answer to those questions?
No, I mean, there's no perfect democracy, and we know that even the United States wasn't founded as a perfect democracy. When it was founded, it was the only liberal democracy in the world. But it was, of course, a much, 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 much flawed liberal democracy, certainly compared to what we have today. And every country has to make this effort, make a process in which it becomes more and more liberal and democratic. And really, there's no easy way. Um, of course, in Israel, I mean, personally, I think that the occupation is something that has to end. I mean, obviously, we can't be a true liberal democracy as long as we're holding millions of people under military occupation. So there's a way to go, and we're all on the path. And but I don't, I certainly don't subscribe to this view that you're either a fully fledged liberal democracy or you're not. You're nothing. You're a fascist, autocratic, whatever nation. That's just not how things work, right? Not in the United States, not in Europe, and not in Israel.
Yeah. An interesting question here comes up. It's like, I mean, in one way, we want to delegitimize Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, but there are two B'Tzelem Elohim, right? So how do you square the rejecting and the desire?
What? Of course. I mean, all people are B'Tzelem Elohim, but that doesn't mean, let's say, if someone steals from me, that I'm not going to complain to the police. And it doesn't mean that if there's a criminal who, God forbid, murdered someone, we're not going to put them in jail. And it doesn't mean that if there are people who are anti-democratic and that say that they want to turn Israel into halachic theocratic state, that I cannot identify that they are dangerous to democracy and they are dangerous to the rights of everybody between the river and the sea, and that I don't want them to be a part of my of my legitimate democratic arena. Even the Knesset itself legislated that parties that propagate racism cannot run for election. So, of course, this law is not totally enforced, but it means that democracy has in itself structures or mechanisms that protect itself. And not
Which is
everybody can.
by the way, it's
Hmm?
even more in a way active or active. I mean, progress or progressive compared to the U.S., right? Which in U.S. anyone can run if they
Yeah,
have the rights, the right,
yeah.
they're in the right age and they were born in America.
The fact
Uh,
that a person is the image of God, which I totally believe everybody is, doesn't mean that I need to, apart from treating them with respect and respecting their rights, it doesn't mean that I need to talk to them or give them legitimacy, and certainly not give them power over me. That's something else.
yeah, good. So I will want to just add to this conversation the idea that. Um, I mean, we are in the process of like identifying how to work from here and how to combine those fights together. I mean, for democracy, and we are taking by definition for granted the liberalism. So I'm happy that we have this discussion because to me, as a secular Israeli, I wasn't always aware of this basis analysis and where it came from. So I appreciate that. Then there is a question that is coming up very, very often is that we are trying to compare ourselves all the time to other nations. And we just talked about it a little bit more about that. Um, is that something that you believe that we all need to do in many ways, or it's a way of us thinking that we need to because we want to believe we are Western, we are even though we are in the Middle East, we cannot really combine those two elements together, like being also Western in the Middle East, Jewish and democratic.
I
This is
mean,
all.
no, come on. I mean, India is not Western, and it's a democracy. Of course, it's in crisis as well today from a populist leader, but it's a democracy. Japan is not Western, but it's a democracy. Yes, I believe, and my book tries to show that these ideas and values developed in the West. But of course, they're not limited to the West. Of course, non-Westerners can adopt them if they want to, right? Many non-Westerners adopted communism, Marxism. Was it not Marx a German Jewish philosopher? Yes, he was a Western person, but his philosophy was able to spread all over the world, even China until today, right? So there's nothing that is limited to Westerners about these ideas. I myself practiced Buddhist meditation. Is it okay? I'm not an Eastern person, but I mean, yeah. So
Yeah,
Israel being Middle Eastern, which it is, right? I think can totally be a democratic and liberal country. Yes.
good. And we're looking at that. So for the next 10 minutes, I want us to step away a little bit for the book and just talk about your work and your projection about the next fight in Israel. I mean, which is obviously the elections are coming, but the the struggle right now that we have against a government that, as you called it, like a more messianic, racist, right wing, that is not willing to actually give up on the power and are
Yeah.
actually working even to get even more power. I mean, what you're seeing on the street right now in Israel is an effort to do what? To protest more, or to get organized to the election, or to and when you look about the opposition, right? I mean, in many ways, that we are not organized, right, to actually win this
Yeah.
election. What is your take on that?
Look, first and foremost, it's important to understand people in Israel are tired. They're exhausted. Okay. We're after 3 years of demonstrations, weekly demonstrations, perhaps the largest civic uprising movement in the West in modernity, right? Every week, tens of thousands of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. You didn't see anything like that in any other country. By the way, it shows the strength and the determination of civic society in Israel, which is something amazing, which gives me, if I have to be, if I have to note something that makes me a bit optimistic, it's that. But people are totally exhausted, and people have gone for the last 2 years through a war. I mean, I'm now in Manhattan. The war is over for I don't 3 months, but I'm breathing. I'm in Manhattan, and I I'm out of the like the this pressure pot cooker that is Israel. Of course, I follow the news, but I'm breathing, and I'm just living a little bit. It's unbelievable the amount of pressure people in Israel are under. And so first of all, what I think you see now in the streets in Israel is exhaustion. Exhaustion. Apart from that, there's a bit of despair. We need to understand this. Netanyahu has held on to power against all odds. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just unbelievable, right? And people have thought that he would resign immediately. Then they thought he would resign after a few months. Then they would thought he would resign after a year. It's been 2 years of war. War has ended, and and he keeps his coalition alive. It's unbelievable. And so also that. And yes, our opposition is not very organized, not certainly one league down than Netanyahu in terms of political acumen and abilities. That's just the truth. Netanyahu is way superior in how he knows to manipulate politics than any other person today in the political arena. And that's what's happening, right? I think apart from that, we are now reorganizing towards the election. I mean, this year is the election year. Election will be October the latest. And we need to organize ourselves.
Yeah,
There's probably going to be a unification of a few parties. Eisenkot will run either with Bennett or with Lapid. This is all coming, and people are getting ready to to protest again, and perhaps even just to concentrate on perhaps the last week or two of the campaign and get people out to vote. I know there certainly is a lot of motivation on our side to just vote, get out and vote, and this I think also is something that makes me a little bit hopeful, because you don't see that same motivation on the other side.
yeah. And just on that part, I mean, obviously there is for those of you who are Israelis and can fly and vote, there is an aid coalition is working on that to help people to get to out to vote, and we are going to try and help the go to vote campaigns from here, even if you cannot actually fly and vote or you don't have the rights to vote. I think that all Jews around the world who believe that Israel is a nation state of the Jewish people should get involved and try to help the same way as we are Californians helping Arizona to as a swing state. So we can do that as well in Israel, and we will talk more about that. Tomer, I want to really thank you for this discussion. I mean, like this is one of those discussions that are less political in the sense of like what's exactly happening in Israel, that we usually bring, but it's giving at least many of us the tools to think about our parts in this fight for liberal democracy in Israel, a Jewish liberal democracy in Israel, and to understand that those values are the values that was that there is a reason why the Declaration of Independence is following the Sage right
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
and the Bible in many ways.
Yeah.
And it's not foreign for us to be that way. Anything you
Here,
would like
thank
to
you.
add,
Thank you
Tomer?
for organizing this. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure, and thank you all for joining us today. Really, I'm so happy to be able to talk to all of you and just to share and to be together a little bit.
And if there are more questions you want to send to Tomer, please send them over. I'll connect you. And be good,
And
and let's
final
do good.
plug. This is the book.
This is the book, and I put the link on the chat to
Yeah.
Amazon.
Thank you.
And obviously, if you know anyone who can help Tomer to, I mean, in the tour, podcasters and others, send
Oh,
me
I'd be happy
over,
to appear. Yes. If
and
yeah. Thank
bringing them
you.
to
Thank
your
you.
shul. Okay. Until next
Great.
time, and probably next time I'll be in Israel and we'll talk from Israel.
Thank.
See ya.
Great. Thank
Bye
you
bye.
very much. Bye bye.